Good morning, VEDA people. Figured I'd try something a little different today, format-wise. Today's topic for VEDA 16 is VEDA Day 16 is who would you like to meet? Who's alive? Who would you most like to meet? Who's alive? So I don't know. I was thinking about it a little bit, and I had some thoughts on it. So I'd love to hear your feedback on it as well. I don't know. So I was thinking about how I would choose if I could, just meet anybody. And I was thinking, the typical things that everyone else goes for. I mean, I generally think other people have, pretty good judgment, have a lot of ideas worth considering. And so, I could go and I could meet a music star or maybe some scientist or an astronaut or some kind of visionary or someone who's really wealthy. And but I've actually met a lot of people that would fall into the category. I mean, they're people that other people would like to meet. Since I ran for public office, I met a ton of politicians in candid, it was like kind of waiting rooms. So, I had opportunities to talk. It wasn't just hey, shake your hand or anything like that, which is another thing the question kind of leaves open, I think. A lot of people, they say, hey, I met the guy who's running for president or whatever, or the gal who's running for president. And what they mean is that they were at some rally with like 50,000 other people and they shook their hands. Now, it's interesting because I've actually met, yesterday I donated to Governor Gary Johnson's campaign for president of the United States. And he's part of Team Gov. It's two former governors who are running for president of the United States as president and vice president. And I think that's a refreshing amount of experience, leadership experience, which in most years is a really big deal with the partisans, the major party supporters. But not, this year, all of a sudden when, the Libertarian ticket has, experience out the wazoo, then all of a sudden the Republicans and Democrats don't care about experience anymore. So I don't know. It seems a little interesting to me. That's what a partisan is. They're someone who just essentially disregards any negatives about a candidate in favor of going with their crowd, their party or their team. So it's just like professional sports or something. So a couple of the people I've met, I've met, like I said, a guy who's running for president. I've met Gary Johnson several times. We've had the opportunity to sit and talk. That's one of the nice things about voting for Libertarian candidates for president is they travel around, and there aren't huge crowds typically, and so you can, oftentimes sometimes have dinner with them, at the very least, sit and chat for a couple minutes while they're waiting for a ride or whatever. And they always seem eager to do so. They really want to hear what people think. So I would look at it's johnsonweld.com, and I would go to their website and see if they're coming to your neighborhood, because maybe you can meet a presidential candidate, and hopefully if you look at his record and what he stands for, he's someone you can vote for. But anyway, so I've met some people who ended up being Supreme Court justices in my state of Ohio. So, those are pretty important people. One of the things that I found from meeting these people is that, when I've met really, really wealthy people, they don't really, sometimes I think it's best just to talk about, stuff that interests you personally and that interests them personally, because I think that's a more refreshing engagement for them. It doesn't seem like any of them have any kind of magic advice that they hand out to people and turn them into millionaires too. It's not like a magic wand that they wave. It's talent that is, could be natural or could be something that they develop over time. A lot of times even the natural talent, their parents kind of helped encourage them along, in their abilities. So I don't know. It's if you go and you meet someone super wealthy, I mean, that's just you're part of their entourage for a couple minutes while you meet them, and that's assuming that they like you at all. They probably just see you as yet another person who probably wants something from them. So I don't know. So I probably wouldn't meet with anyone who's just super wealthy. Same thing with famous people. I mean, it's like, what are you going to say? I like how you sing. I like how you play piano. I mean, they hear that a billion times a day. It's got to be kind of meaningless. I mean, it's nice to say, because, it would really suck to be really great at something and have no one ever tell you about it. But, I think all these things kind of lack an originality, and I also think that these discussions should be reciprocal, So, I mean, I like when I have met people like this, they seem to be interested in talking about, prospects for the future from various perspectives. They're interested. I work in, the technology field, and they seem to be, for the most part, interested in where technology's going, talking about technologies that maybe they haven't heard about. So that kind of stuff is, seems to go over well. But there's another thing too is, when it comes to scientists and philosophical leaders and stuff like that, I think it'd be interesting, to meet with someone that would be really interesting to have a conversation with. And so I think a guy along those lines would be Stefan Molyneux, who is a philosopher. He has a podcast and stuff like that. So I think I could have a lengthy and interesting conversation with him. So he'd be at the top of the list. But, like almost all, the thing with talking, the idea, the problem I have probably picking out someone to talk to who is who's alive and, someone I'd like to meet, is that they're so meetable. I mean, they're alive. I mean, most of these people, unless they're a recluse, which, they probably wouldn't be all that fun to meet anyway, you could go to some place where they are. You could go to a convention, or you could go to a book signing, or you could, there are all these things. And I'm trying to remember where I heard about it, but there was a guy who gave some kind of training class on entrepreneurship or something like that, and he just assigned the students in his college class to get get some really famous person to acknowledge their existence, either respond to an email or return a call or something, to actually contact some really famous and supposedly inaccessible person. And I think the lesson was that if you try, you really can talk to any of these people you want. So I guess from my standpoint, seeing as there are all kinds of famous people I've met astronauts, and I haven't met John Glenn. I'd be kind of interested, just he's a famous Ohioan and stuff like that. He's at all kinds of events. I could probably meet him sometime. It'd be nice to. I just, he was a role model growing up. Not so much ever since he, went kind of hard on the Democrat side of things. I just kind of question his philosophy on that. So it actually, I think, made me lose a little bit of respect for him. But still, you can't ignore his achievements, and it'd be neat to be able to say, hey, look, I met John Glenn. But so many of these people, you can just go meet them. You find out when they're going to be in town, or you go to where they are. And I see this all the time with it's maybe a little stalkerish, but with YouTubers and stuff like that. People will go and you'll see, my wife was watching a video with Casey Neistat and another one with Roman Atwood, and they just some guy was waiting. What was it? He saw Casey Neistat was traveling across the country, and he was stopping at truck stops. So this guy, he was hilarious. He was like a roly-poly guy with a, woodland camo baseball cap and a huge bushy beard, and he's like waiting in this truck stop for just in case Casey Neistat would stop. It was supposedly the world's biggest truck stop, and it was just funny because this guy, like, he just kind of anticipated where the guy would be, and sure enough, he showed up and he got to meet him. And the Roman Atwood guys, they knew he was going to Chicago, and I guess there's this giant reflective jelly bean thing, and which, I've been to Chicago a million times. I've never been like into Chicago just to see Chicago. I've always been there on the way to go to other places. But anyway, he figured, these guys, they figured Roman Atwood and his buddies would go to the giant reflective jelly bean in Chicago, and they did. Because you got to do that. If I were visiting Chicago for a vlog, it's a really good location to film anything. So all of a sudden these people run up. So yeah, I'd say once you figure out who you want to talk to, then you can just learn about what they're doing. A lot of times in this day and age, they tweet about it, or they put it online, or they have a tour to go promote something, or they're going to be speaking somewhere, and then oftentimes they have a publicist. You can just find out, or you can even ask to talk to them. And especially in the day and age of Skype, which I'm a huge fan of, you don't even have to travel. Theoretically, if you had some kind of compelling reason, you could go and just talk to these people. There's a really interesting story from my family. My sister-in-law was traveling to New Orleans. I think she was with AmeriCorps or something. And she was a huge fan of a musician from the 60s and 70s. His name was Biff Rose. And so she just decided to look him up. And it turns out, he used to be more famous. He was never like Beatles famous or anything, to my knowledge. But my parents had his albums. My wife's parents had his albums. He was there's a humorous angle to his material and stuff like that. But he's not exactly apparently doing a whole bunch right now. I guess people weren't interested in his stuff anymore. Maybe he got tired of it and just decided to relax and retire and stuff like that. So anyway, she looked him up, and she emailed him or something through his website, and it just went straight to him, and he just said, "Hey, I'm celebrating my birthday. Do you want to come over and hang out?" And so here she's like hanging out with a star. And I've even found it, when it comes to musicians and stuff, if you want to meet them, you can just go. They oftentimes have if you buy a CD, you can usually get it signed or something by the musician. So, that's what I've done. I've met, there was a time, right after the recording industry started suing their customers for liking their product. I just decided, well, I'm not going to buy any more CDs from the recording industry if I can help it. I'm going to buy the CDs directly from the artist. So I would go to concerts, and then I would buy the CD at their little merchandise booth, and then I'd go and have it autographed because I wanted proof that I actually bought it from the real artist. So there was a famous comedian who I really think you should all check him out. I'm sure there's some things on YouTube about him. His name was Mitch Hedberg, and unfortunately he passed away. I think I was at his last show. It was in Columbus, Ohio, and then I learned immediately after that show. It didn't go so well. It was, he seemed like maybe to be intoxicated in some way, or maybe on drugs or something, and it didn't go well. There were a lot of hecklers and stuff yelling at him. His girlfriend came on stage and did a couple sets, and then the hecklers booed her, and a couple of the other comedians came out and got mad at the hecklers. It was kind of a mess, but I'd seen him a couple years before in Cincinnati, and he was just amazing, and so I bought a CD of his, and it's nice because I have the CD in my music collection, so even when I'm listening to other music on like random shuffle, every once in a while a couple of his jokes will come on, and I'll have fond memories of that. But yeah, I met Mitch Hedberg, and I got him to autograph my the comedy CD. And there's a cat chasing a bird. Things you see on your way to work. So yeah, let's see who else. Oh, there's a musician from Australia who is on tour, Butterfly Boucher, and I like her album, and so I went and I bought it at her show. And then I have like a picture. I even got a picture. She's like me and my wife and Butterfly Boucher, and I'm holding my signed CD and stuff. So I mean, if you just set out to do these things, you really can meet anyone you want. But you know, I don't really know who I want to meet at this point. You know, I think if I want to meet someone, then I just go and set out to meet them. So, but you know, I honestly, I meet enough people just just out and about doing what I do, that I don't really have this craving to go out and meet people. And one of the interesting things too is, I think in this day and age, you can just, you could probably set up a Skype call with just about anyone. I actually recently, I was in a Skype conversation with a couple of X Games athletes, and I was just, I was curious, I don't get a chance to talk to a lot of like top athletes and stuff like that, which obviously X Games athletes are. And what I was curious is just how much of their day do they really spend on, prepping for the X Games. And it turned out it was most of them said about a third of their life, a third of their waking hours, which when you think about it, that's a lot of time to go and do other stuff. And a lot of these X Games athletes, they do have other things that they have to do. I mean, some of them might make a living as an X Games athlete, but a lot of them do other things. So anyway, I would just think about all the options and in what way you want to meet them, and I'd look up how to reach them, talk to their publicists, find out from Twitter and stuff if they're going to be in your town, and go talk to them or something like that. So yeah, that'd be my advice. Sorry that the video kind of cut over all of a sudden there. I was filming on my cell phone, and for some reason it said the phone was getting too hot. So I should probably, maybe I was filming it in 4K, so maybe it was getting too hot because of that. But the car is kind of cool. It's not a hot day. It's not sunny. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for riding to work with me, or 90% of the ride to work. And now I'm in the parking lot. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts. Who would you like to meet? Of course, I'm going to be checking your VEDA blogs to find out, vlogs to find out what you think about this. But yeah, let me know who you'd like to meet, and why, and whether or not you think, it's as easy as I say to go and meet people, whether or not you've tried those techniques. If they didn't work, maybe I'll have some suggestions for making it work better. But yeah, it seems like we're in a very accessible time in the universe. I mean, there could have been, if you were born, a couple decades earlier, it might have been really hard to get a hold of people. But now, as long as you know how, I mean, you can pretty much get in touch with anyone you want, and communicating with them initially is probably the first step in meeting them, unless they're being semi-public about where they're going to be, and then you can just go and meet them at one of those places. Meet them at a meetup, meet them at a book signing, meet them at some event that they're hosting in your town. So anyway, that's it for me. If you liked the video, like it. I don't get, I'm not asking for pay for it, but I really like it when people like my videos, because that's a way of knowing that you're out there. If you have questions or comments, then of course comment. And if you'd like to see more of what I come up with, then hit subscribe. So I'll see you tomorrow.